You know what? I said I was gonna make a video about talking about my childhood and where I grew up, and I barely even touched on it. So let me try to hit it a little bit harder. So I was saying that I grew up in not a predominantly white institution, not a predominantly white neighborhood. Yonkers, New York. It is, I think it's a population of 200, 300,000 people. When I was growing up, it was starting to become majority Hispanic. It was like, I don't think it was majority Hispanic yet. I think it was still majority white in 92, but it is majority Hispanic now. Before 1992, Yonkers was one of the most segregated cities in America. I heard that stat from somewhere. Because of like school zones, they made like the school zones. There's housing that's placed in industrial areas, like where I grew up. So you have like predominantly Black and Hispanic students being limited to where they can go to school, while you have the whiter kids who live in suburbs going to schools that were better off or going to private schools. I'm trying not to go off in the policy here. I'm just trying to go off on like where I grew up. In elementary school, I went to school like literally right next to a major ghetto. It's called Schlobum. It's like a German name, but we called it Slowbaum. And so like I would say the population there was like 40% Black, 40% Hispanic, 10% Asian, 10% white. When I got to middle school, I had speaking of which, I didn't have any really extracurricular activities going to public school. A lot of my extracurricular activities were just after school programs that were, the teachers there watching the kids for 2 extra hours as parents came home from work to pick their kids up like 5:30, 6 p.m. at night. So I was consistently a kid that got picked up I went to school at like 7 o'clock, the early morning program. I got out of school at 6 o'clock, the after school program. And it blew my mind when I came here to Florida to see that most kids did not experience that, because where I grew up, that was the predominant experience. Not only that, but a lot of the kids admire the fact that I had a father in my life, and most of them didn't. And that is sad as fuck to see that. But most of them did it, and it didn't, regardless of race. A lot of them did not. Actually, a lot of my Asian friends, they had parents that were together, but their fucking parents were so unhappy, and it was like a violent, turbulent home. Anyway, so I experienced that. When I was in middle school, I had things like art, I had things like music, I had physical education, and then in 7th grade, all that shit got cut, and I never experienced it again. So I had art. Growing up, I had art and music class from pre-K all the way up to 7th grade, and then nothing else. Any other extracurricular activities that I wanted to experience, I would have to do it on my parents' dime outside of school. Growing up, seeing these schools out here in Florida, that's just not a thing. Like, they have fields with grass on them, bare minimum. They have tracks that are all weather. It's not just hard concrete or clay. They have tennis courts. They have golf, like areas that they can golf on. They have bowling alleys. Like, none of this. I didn't have any of this. In Yonkers, we had one area, like if you had a swimming team, there was like 1 or 2 schools that had a swimming pool. I don't remember if it was like Yonkers High or if it was Gorton that had it, but just 1 or 2 areas that had a swimming pool. And if you wanted to participate on a swimming team, you had to go there. Okay, what else? What else did I notice? So we had theater when I was growing up. Maybe I experienced it once or twice in grade school as a after-school program from a Christian group. So it was like a Christian group that wanted to bring theater, and our school enabled them to volunteer their time to teach kids who wanted to get into performing arts. So that was the only way I had access to it, was through philanthropy. The fuck? Whereas other schools, they have the money to get the funding for that. I remember being in 2nd grade and in 5th grade, being with my mom, her taking me out of school to be with her on the picket line for teachers to protest against their working conditions and for them to have contracts for them to work towards, and better pay, better retirement, better pensions, healthcare, etc. Like, so I remember being there with my mom, with her labor union, protesting against these things. Not against it, but protesting so they can have a better work life, better quality work life. I remember my dad protesting a similar thing within his labor union. When I got to high school, did we have a theater? No. I remember, let me skip that. There was one time I was going to be in a play, and I remember studying super hard for it when I was in the 3rd grade. I was one of the best readers in the class, and so I was going to be the griot within this play. And then we lost funding for the play, so I never even got a chance to participate in it. So going into high school, I don't think we had a stage, we had an auditorium, but we didn't have any plays. But we had like budget for groups to create their own social clubs. So I was part of a anime club. I was part of a robotics club. I was a part of Asian club. And in many, many cases, we had to do our own fundraising to get anything done. And a lot of these schools that I'm surrounded by, there's funding in place for that. They do have to go out and sell candy, but a lot of times when I'm seeing people sell candy, I'm seeing Black or Hispanic kids going around selling candy in order to raise money for whatever field trip or for whatever thing they wanted to do. Not saying that it doesn't happen, but from what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot of white kids have to do that. What else? God damn. So, all right. When I got into college, I'm talking to you about the lack of experiences that I've had in my childhood because public education just ain't funding it. And it's not like, oh man, these are just the failed Democrat policies. Like it's like both sides just not funding education. And if people want to get these experiences, they got to pay for it. They got to pay to play in private education. So going into college, I would say it was the first time I had the opportunity to perform in a more organized theater. If you take me for an example, if I'm not intentionally included in these things where like all throughout my life, I wouldn't even say if someone has like the insight of policymakers, perhaps they could say that I am being intentionally excluded, or people that look like me are being intentionally excluded because you have mostly Black and brown people in the public education system where I grew up at, and mostly white people are in the private sector getting educated and getting all these perks. I guess you could say that I am being excluded. But at some point, if I'm not intentionally excluded, or if I don't get the money to go do these things myself, then when will this shit ever happen? Why is it that people in more affluent public education systems, why do they get to experience these things and we don't? Like, it's like we're being bred to be blue collar workers because all we're doing is getting a basic education. We're not being enriched by any other type of arts or any other type of extracurricular activities whatsoever. And if we do, then that means we got to have less food on the table in order to experience these things. So people who come from my area, they are not starting at the same starting line as people who come from more affluent areas. That's just a fact. And I feel like it is incumbent on the government to change that. And it's not, I don't want the quality of other people's education to diminish. I want ours to be at this up to par as theirs. I want more investment in our education so it could be like theirs. So yeah, going into theater at my college, that was the first time I really got to experience a theater workshop. And I mean, I was only one of 2 Black people who ever who was ever even in those shows. Like typically we'll only have like 2 or 3 Black people per year in the show out of a cast of, it could be up to like 20, 25. But if the school did want to stay true to their diversity, equity, inclusion principles, and overall there was a push to get more Black people in theater, then I just told you the whole background. Like it's like 18 years worth of background of I'm in these schools. I'm never getting a chance to experience that. And there's other Black people like me, there's other minorities like me who are experiencing the same thing too. At what point do they get to experience these things? In my other video, I asked a question, is it incumbent of the government to service people? Like, is it incumbent of the government to improve the education system? And I think, yeah, it is. If we're going to say that it's the government's responsibility to defend its people, I think education needs to be a part of that defense plan. We, like us participating in this individualistic capitalist society, we need to be armed with the right education to be able to defend ourselves and to be able to compete on a global scale. And we are massively, massively doing a disservice to his people by excluding them. At first, we were excluding them just based on appearance, but now we've changed the rules to exclude people based on income and create systems to where people of a lower income are funding their own schools and people of a higher income are funding their own schools. And it's not money is being extracted into this one big ass pot and being divided equally. So yeah, like at what point do you, if you want to see people who have been traditionally excluded from participating in events, if you want to see them be able to participate, what do you put in place to create that outcome? Yeah, so I just wanna stop that there. I have like more thoughts as to like why immigrants tend to do better overall globally than non-immigrants in like capitalist societies, but that's a conversation for another video.